Hey everyone, Mark here. Before I get to today's episode, I have a special announcement to make. I will be in Orlando, Florida on Sunday, August 11th, 2019, and I would love to have dinner with you. If you will be or can make it to the Orlando area on August 11th, please email me at feedback@resourcefuldesigner.com and let me know. I'll be attending a podcast conference, and every year that I do, I set up a meeting for Resourceful Designer listeners, and it's been a great time. So I would love to have dinner with you if you can make it. So once again, that's August 11th, 2019, which is a Sunday. And if you're interested, email me at feedback@resourcefuldesigner.com. And now, on with the show. Resourceful Designer, episode 173, creating a contingency plan for your design business.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He was extremely shy until his late teens, Mark DeCote.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for pressing play on whatever device it is that you're listening on. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about the steps you should have in place in the event that something derails your design business. I'm also going to share a shopping tip of the week to save you money, before ending with a question from Christy about turning down work from troublesome clients. Now, I normally reserve this section of the podcast to tell you a little bit about what I've been up to this past week, but there hasn't really been that much. I haven't had any new clients come in, no new contracts signed this week, and that happens. And all the work that I've been working on is stuff that I've told you in previous weeks. I had no new projects I was starting this week. Then that's just the way that running a home-based graphic design business is. Some weeks you get lots of new stuff coming in, some weeks no. Some weeks you got brand new project to start, and some weeks it's just continuing projects you already had on the go. Although I can tell you I had to restart a project this week because of an issue with an Adobe Illustrator file. It wasn't a big project. I had created a sponsor board for a client. They have an event and they asked me to create a board that had over 100 different sponsor logos on it. So it was a matter of just placing the logos and different tier levels depending on the sponsorship and making sure that everything fit nicely. And I sent the proof off to the client. They approved it with a couple of minor changes. And when I went to reopen the file, no matter what I could try, it just kept crashing Illustrator. And I couldn't figure it out. I could open up the file. I had sent the client a PDF. I was able to open the PDF in Acrobat. I could open it in Preview on my Mac. But even if I tried resaving it, I couldn't get it open in Illustrator. But luckily, since I was able to open it in Acrobat, it made it really easy for me to recreate it in Illustrator because I had all the logos and everything, and it was just a matter of repositioning them following the PDF as a guide. So project, it took me several hours originally to do, but it didn't take me very long to redo it. But it was still a little bit of a pain having to recreate a project, especially after the client had pretty well approved it, because then I had to resend it to the client just for them to double check it again to make sure I hadn't made an error the second time around. So that's the kind of week I've been having so far. Now, I want to remind you that for the remainder of the month of July 2019, nominations are open for the Podcast Awards. Now, Resourceful Designer is in contention, but I need your help. It's the podcasts with the most nominations make it onto the final ballot, and I need your help to get Resourceful Designer that far. I made it into the finals for 2016 and 17, but I did not make the cut last year, and I would love to get back on track again this year. If you haven't done so already and you would like to lend your support to the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/podcast awards. You will need to register with your email address. Then you can cast your ballot and simply choose Resourceful Designer as your choice in the arts category. Now, feel free to fill out any other podcasts you listen to in the other categories, but make sure it's Resourceful Designer in the arts category. And I thank you for your nomination. Now, before I get to today's topic, I'd like to acknowledge smartpress as a sponsor of the podcast. Now, smartpress is an employee-owned, premium online printing company that provides exceptional creative flexibility, convenience, and quality. And they back it all up with a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Now, unlike other online printers where you upload your files, place your order, and then cross your fingers and hope for the best, at SmartPress, every print job, regardless of size, is reviewed by a pre-press professional and assigned a dedicated customer service representative, and they'll inform you of any concerns before it ends up costing you any money. The SmartPress offers custom sizes, exact quantities, unique finishing options, including laser die cutting, and over 50 paper stock choices for you to choose from. There is nobody better to handle your next printing job. Now, as a listener of Resourceful Designer, SmartPress is offering you a free paper sample book to make it easier for you to choose the perfect surface for your next print job. To get your free book, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/smartpress and request your sample. Thank you, SmartPress, for being a sponsor of Resourceful Designer. And now this week's shopping tip of the week. Now, I should have shared this last week just to give you a little bit of a heads up, because if you're not listening to this episode the day it comes out or the next day, then you've already missed it. But the shopping tip of the week is Amazon Prime Day. Amazon Prime Day this year in 2019 is July 15th and 16th. They've extended it to a 2-day sale. And let me tell you, they have some amazing deals offered on Prime Day. Every year, I know I go kind of overboard seeing things that, wow, like I didn't even know I wanted that, but seeing the deal that they're offering, I just have to pick it up. But then there's other times, there's stuff that I've been waiting for. This year, we've have problems with our Wi-Fi in the house. In our bedroom, if we're lying in bed, the Wi-Fi is very spotty because the router, the modem is at the opposite end of the house. So this year, I'm eyeing a couple of different Wi-Fi extenders to boost the signal for that end so we get better internet in the bedroom. So that's one of the things. We knew that we've had this problem, but I've been waiting for Amazon Prime Day specifically for that because I know they're going to have great deals on these things. Some other stuff I'm looking at are an LED light for my DSLR camera. I purchased a new Canon camera, or new to me Canon camera, not that long ago. And I've been doing some videos and fooling around with videos, but I need some better lighting. So I'm looking at buying some lights for the camera, as well as possibly a better mic for my camera, depending on what the sales are. I'm also looking at a new CO2 detector. Our carbon monoxide detector downstairs started beeping, saying that it was at the end of its life, so I have to replace that. And I'm also looking at maybe a few more smart plugs that I can control devices with my Amazon Echo that I bought at last year's Amazon Prime Day. So I've already created a shopping list, and who knows what other things are going to pop up. It's a great chance to get new wires, charging cables, devices. Last year, I bought a powered USB hub so that I can add more items onto my iMac because the USB connectors on the back of my iMac were all full, and that's come in very handy, and so many more. So if there's anything that you need for your business or your home life for that matter, Amazon Prime Day is the perfect opportunity to pick it up. Now, during your shopping, if you would like to help Resourceful Designer, you can use the link resourcefuldesigner.com/Amazon, which will redirect you directly to Amazon, and then you just continue shopping the way you normally do. But if you use that link, resourcefuldesigner.com/Amazon, I will receive a small commission on the purchase that you make. So that's another way that you can help support Resourceful Designer. And that link doesn't only work for Amazon Prime Day. You can use that at any time of the year. Anytime you're shopping at Amazon, if you want, you can use resourcefuldesigner.com/Amazon, and it will redirect you to Amazon, where you can make your purchase without any additional expense to you. So that's this week's, I guess, shopping tip of the week. First shopping tip that I've ever offered. And now, creating a contingency plan for your design business. For the past 172 episodes of Resourceful Designer, I've been providing advice to help you start, run, and grow your design business. And I know for a fact that many of my listeners, perhaps you among them, are running your own design business out of your home right now. Maybe you're doing it as a side gig, and maybe you're doing it full time. But for the sake of today's topic, I'm going to assume that you've already succeeded and your design business is up and running. So you're plugging away day after day, week after week, engaging with clients and designing amazing things for them. Life is great. You're living the designer's dream. But what if The unexpected happened. Are you prepared? What would you do in the event of, a natural disaster that destroys your home? All of a sudden, without any warning, you lose everything in your office, all your equipment, everything. It's gone. And it doesn't matter if it was a flood, a tornado, a forest fire, or maybe even something as more common as being burglarized. Thieves broke in and made off with everything in your office. What would you do? Here's another scenario. Maybe you're married, maybe you have a family. Is your business prepared should some emergency happen to a loved one and you have to drop everything for who knows how long and be by their side? Or what if something happened to you? You're hit by a car on the way home from the grocery store and you end up in the hospital for several weeks. What would you do? How about a less tragic, but maybe still devastating tale for your business? Something happens to the developer that you've been working with for months and years, and all of a sudden they can't work for you anymore, and they leave you stranded. Again, what would you do? Any of these events could happen and prevent your business from functioning, and that's where a contingency plan comes into play. So, what is a contingency plan? Well, the easiest way to define it is to think of it as a plan B for your business in the event of some sort of setback. A contingency plan creates a clear path, a course of action for you to take to get your business through whatever hardship you're facing. All of the scenarios I described are pretty harsh. You wouldn't really want any of them to happen, but there is always the possibility that they do. And even though those scenarios are harsh, building a contingency plan doesn't have to be. It just needs a little bit of time and a little bit of foresight to prepare. So here are some steps to help you with yours. First is identify triggers. Figure out the different scenarios that could affect your business. Now, I just shared a few of them with you, but there could be many, many more different scenarios that I am not even considering. And because everybody's situation is different, there's different things that could affect your business. What if you live in an area where the power grid is unstable and there's always the possibility that you lose power for an extended period of time? How would you continue working if all of a sudden you lost electricity? As I said, each scenario will require its own contingency plan. What will you do if you lose all your office equipment? What will you do if a loved one is in need of you and you can't work? What will you do if you are incapacitated and can't work? What will you do if a trusted contractor suddenly disappears? What will you do if, for whatever reason, your business has a setback? You need to identify these triggers before you can figure out how to plan to cope with them. Now, a great way to figure out triggers is also to discuss this with family and friends as well. They may think of something that you haven't, but you need to identify those triggers. Then, once you know the triggers, then it's a matter of creating a contingency plan for each one of them. So once you've identified what can impact your business, then go about figuring out the steps you'll need to take to get over whatever hurdle is in front of you. Again, no one's plans are identical. So your plan for in case of a power outage might be different than my plan for a power outage. Plans may include having a backup generator that you can turn on power at your house, or the plan may include an office space in a nearby city that you can go work at. Every plan is different, but you should have something set in case of those triggers. But regardless of what your triggers are and what your plans are, there are a few things that maybe you should consider. One is, how are you going to notify your clients of your situation? That's probably a big one. If something's going to affect your business and take you away from it for any extended period of time, you need to have a way to notify your clients. Not only do you have to notify your clients, but what about any approaching deadlines that you have that all of a sudden you can no longer meet? What sort of plans do you have? Do you have a backup? Is there anything you can discuss with the clients? Maybe there's fellow designers you can reach out to for help that can take over for you. It's always nice to have a network of people that you can rely on, and you can just pass stuff off and say, here, this is what still needs to be done. Can you take over for me? Or maybe if it's the case of needing to replace your equipment, if it was destroyed or stolen or whatever, do you have the means in place to do so? Do you know how long it would take to do so? So part of the contingency plan is to set a timeline of different steps. What steps do you need to take in the hours after whatever event, in the days, possibly the weeks after your contingency plan is triggered? Whenever something actually happens is not the time to start thinking of, now, what do I have to do? If you have a contingency plan in place, you already know. It's just like a home evacuation plan or emergency plan that the family say you should talk to your kids. If the fire alarm goes off, is not the time to start explaining to people what you have to do when you hear a fire alarm. They should know beforehand that if the fire alarm goes off, you make your way to this exit and you get out of the house. They have these drills in schools, they have them in hospitals, they have them all over the place. Well, you need to do the same sort of thing for your design business. If this happens, then what steps do I have in place to get through that as efficiently as possible? Now, even if you are running this business by yourself, you should have other people involved in your contingency plan. Now, if you do have some sort of business partner, then yeah, they should definitely be involved in the creation of your plan because they are directly impacted. Make sure that they have all the information they need to handle your side of the business until you are back on your feet and able to contribute again. In the event of some sort of family emergency, is there someone else that you can rely on to notify your clients on your behalf? I mean, the last thing you want to do if you're tending to a loved one or there's some sort of tragic event that happened, the last thing you want to do is to be on the phone calling clients and letting them know that you're not able to work on their project. So is there somebody that you can turn to and say, here, can you contact these people and let them know what has happened? I know I have people that I can rely on for that sort of thing. I even have a friend in place for this podcast. I have a contingency plan that, if need be, he will put out an episode informing you of whatever situation, so you're not left wondering, why hasn't Mark released an episode in a couple of weeks? And guessing what's going on. If something happens, there is somebody that has all the access to my podcast information and can upload a file from their end that will let you know what's going on. And that's just one of my contingency plans. That's for the podcast, but I got a whole bunch already in place for my business. Now, it's one thing to think of your contingency plan as the steps that you need to take in order to alleviate the pressure on your business and hopefully get your business back to operating as soon as possible. But there are several steps you should be considering beforehand to help protect yourself in those events. Because the last thing you need when one of these scenarios occurs is more hardship that affects your business that could have possibly been prevented. Now, one thing is your contract. This is another great reason to have a contract. I know many designers don't work with a contract, but this is another reason. You should have a clause in your contract that states that any natural disaster, any acts of God, any family emergency negates the contract and alleviates you of your duty of meeting a deadline or whatever. You can even include in that clause that should that happen, you will offer a full refund to the client, but you are not responsible for any damages or anything, missed deadlines or all that in those cases. Because you do not want to be held responsible. If something happens to a family member and you have to stop working, and then the client comes back to you and says, no, you promised this by a certain deadline. If you don't meet it, I'm taking you to court or I'm going to sue you. No, that's another great reason to have a contract, and another great reason to have your contract reviewed by a lawyer, just to make sure that this holds up, that should some unforeseen situation arise and you have to stop your business for a short or extended period of time, that your contract will protect you for any work that you've already promised to a client and that you've been paid for. Now, you are a one-person business after all, or I'm presuming you are because that's the majority of my audience. So your clients should understand. I know when my mother passed away in 2013 and my father was in the early stages of his dementia, I had to really step in and take care of everything. And I put my business on hold for a couple of weeks. And I missed some deadlines, but my clients understood. And those deadlines in the long run ended up not really mattering. It was just a deadline we had set. There was no like event coming up, luckily. A couple of the clients asked if they can go elsewhere, and they did, and then ended up coming back to me afterwards. But for the most part, clients will understand if there's some sort of emergency. They will sympathize with you. Now, another thing to protect yourself is insurance. Just because you're working out of your home and you have home insurance doesn't mean your business is protected. Depending on where you are, check the regulations. I have special insurance for my business, not just to cover me for mishaps or being sued or that, but also my computer is listed specifically under my business insurance. All my equipment that I have is under a special clause. Now, this is under my home insurance, but it's a special rider I have on my home insurance specifically for my business. And I pay extra for that. And that's to make sure that I get the real value of everything that I need to get back up and running. Because the insurance company, sometimes they'll say, well, your computer is 3 or 4 years old, so with depreciation and all that, this is how much we'll pay you. Well, my special rider makes sure that I get current market value. So it doesn't matter if my computer is 5 years old, insurance will pay me the amount to buy a brand new computer. Now, speaking of buying new equipment or just shutting your business down for a couple of weeks, a line of credit at your bank is something that really, really helps. Now, I have a line of credit set up that I don't use. It's just there in case of emergencies. And I can tell you, I have used it in the past. Back in, I think it was early 2011, I was working with an iMac G5 is the computer I was using, and the power supply on my iMac went. Now, at that time, I was saving up money already. I was putting a little bit aside every month because I was going to buy one of the brand new iMac 2011s that were not released yet. And I had heard the specs. I was looking forward to it. And a couple of months before their release, the power supply on my iMac G5 went. And I inquired about fixing it, and it just, the cost for something I was only going to keep for another 2 months, it wasn't worth it. So I immediately decided on the spot that I needed a new computer. So I ended up buying a 2010 iMac. It's not the one I wanted, but it was able to get me back up and running. And as I said, it wasn't cost efficient for me to repair the G5. But I didn't have enough money put aside because I still anticipated a couple of months of saving. So luckily, I had a line of credit with my bank that I could draw upon and purchase my new iMac 2010. Now, a line of credit can also come in very handy in the case. If you have to take a couple of weeks or a month off, that means a month's worth where you're not earning any income. Well, a line of credit can save you for paying other bills that you draw upon, and then once you are back and up and running, then you pay off your line of credit. So that's a great part of a contingency plan, is having a line of credit in place that you can draw upon in case of emergency. Just have the willpower to not draw upon it for little reasons that are insignificant. Now, other things to protect yourself are off-site backups. I have several hard drives right here on my desk that I back up everything to. So I have multiple backups here. But if my house was wiped out or somebody came in and robbed my office, I would lose all of this. So having multiple hard drive backups here is kind of redundant in those situations. That's why off-site backup is so important. Now, some people use Dropbox, some people use Google Drive for that sort of stuff, and that's great. I do use those for some stuff, but I really, really like Backblaze. And Backblaze is an off-site archiving solution or backup solution that, unlike Dropbox and Google Drive, where you kind of use them as like an extra hard drive and store stuff on them and back stuff up to them, Backblaze is solely just backup. It is making a copy of your computer, of your external hard drives. I have my external hard drives, Even though they are backups of my computer, I back them up as well. So Backblaze is just kind of a mirror image of whatever your computer is. And what's great about Backblaze is in case of an emergency, yes, you can set up a new computer and re-download. I can set up my computer and say, just grab whatever's on Backblaze and reinstall everything on my computer so that the new computer is identical to my old one. And even better, if you don't have great internet, you can contact Backblaze, and for a small fee, they will ship you a physical hard drive that then you can then copy to your new computer. And I think their price might have gone up slightly. I know it was $50 a year. I think it's $60 a year now. At $60 a year, that peace of mind of knowing that my entire system is backed up somewhere and I have access to it, whether I have to do it to a new computer or whatever, that's just a peace of mind that really, really helps me. Now, if you're interested, I do have an affiliate link with Backblaze, and that's resourcefuldesigner.com/Backblaze. But any sort of backup or offsite backup solution is a must as part of a contingency plan. If you need to get back up and running, you need access to those files. So don't rely on just what's in your house, your apartment, because you never know what can happen to that. Now, another good resource, and I don't say this one's a necessity, but I've always had a safety deposit box at my bank. And in that safety deposit box, I currently have a USB drive that has all my client work in it and all my financial information for my business. And I will swap that out every once in a while. So when I say all my client work, it might be within the last few months. I'll swap it out. I should do it more often, but I probably swap it out every other month. And I've been doing this for years. I used to do it with CDs and DVDs, and before that, I used to back stuff up to floppy disks and go put them in the safety deposit box. It was just an extra thing. All my business forms, the papers that my registration forms and everything for my business, I have copies of them at home, but the originals are all stored in my safety deposit box. So again, that's not a huge expense. I think it cost me $42 per year for a safety deposit box at my bank. And it gives me the peace of mind to know that I have this stuff there that I can go access at any time. I just have to go to the bank and get them if I need them. So all of this to say that you never know what can happen. You never know what can derail your business. You may be having a great time living the high life, doing what you love to do, designing. But there is always a possibility that something unforeseen, something tragic, can happen and throw a wrench into the whole system that you've set up. Now, I personally have several contingency plans in place for my business. And as I said, even for Resourceful Designer, I have some in place for the podcast. And that's just part of doing a business. My father that I mentioned earlier is now 92 years old. And I know his time left on this earth is short. And I have a contingency plan in place for the time that I'll need to take off for his passing. It's not something I look forward to, but I know it's inevitable. So no, contingency plans are not something fun to think about, because the reason you need one, the triggers that will make you implement one, are usually not things you hope to happen. But if you take the time to plan for the worst, it could mean the difference between your business failing altogether and your business surviving in the aftermath of whatever unforeseeable event you face. If your equipment is destroyed or stolen and you don't have the means to replace it, how are you going to continue your business? That's stuff you should be thinking about. Now, of course, there's one big contingency plan that I did not talk about today, and that's what happens in the tragic event of your premature death. What happens to your business and everything you're doing in that case? Now, I'm not going to talk about that today. That's an episode in itself. It's such a big and deep topic. I'm going to save that for a future episode. But for now, I just want you to think about the various events that could affect your design business. And I want you to take the time to come up with your own contingency plans to get through them. Now's the time to do it. Don't wait until it's too late. Now, I would love to know, do you already have contingency plans in place for your design business? Leave me a comment by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 173. And now, the question of the week. And I pulled this question from the Resourceful Designer Facebook group because I thought it merited being discussed more here. And this question came in from Christy. And in the group, I'll just note that Christy already found the solution and has her answer. But I wanted to share this for those of you who may not have seen it or are not part of the Facebook group. And if you're not part of the Facebook group, why not? You can join by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/group. And just make sure you answer the 3 questions. If you don't answer, I don't let you in. But if you answer the questions, you're into the group. But in the group, Christy asked, before I went on my own, I used to work as an in-house designer at a local print shop. I got along very well with everyone except one person who would continually go out of his way to cause huge problems for both myself and others. After I left, there was apparently a huge fight between him and the boss, and he ended up walking out. Now, he is asking if I still do design work and if I could design business cards for him. I need a polite way to tell him that I absolutely do not want to work with him in any capacity and that will hopefully end the conversation without further discussion. Well, thanks for posting the question in the group, Christy. And I know you've got your answers and you said you've already dealt with this, so I'm glad to hear that. But for anybody else who may come into this situation or is currently in this situation, first off, I just want to remind you that episode 134 of the podcast was all about how to politely turn away clients. And way back in episode 42, I did an episode called It's Okay to Say No to Graphic Design Work. So if you're in a situation like this where there's a client you don't want to work with, you may want to listen to one of those 2 episodes. But the main point here to remember is it's your business. You get to choose who you want to and who you do not want to work with. There is nothing that says you have to take on a client that you don't want to work with. And that may mean turning away some money. It may mean in a hardship where you're down on your luck and still turning somebody away because they are not the right person for you. I know I've done this myself. I used to be on the board of directors for this local organization. And while I was on the board of directors, there was this other board member who he and we butted heads on so many of the issues and things. And we did not see eye to eye on many things. And I'm not one to lose my temper, but I can tell you, we got into some pretty heated discussions, he and I. Now, the board eventually voted him out. He was a fellow board member, and we voted him out because of all the problems he was causing. Well, later, a couple of years later, he reached out to me because he knew I was a designer, and he reached out to me for some work. And I politely told him that because of our past differences, I would prefer not work with him. Now, I can't remember the exact wording I used, but I knew I kept it polite, but that was generally the message. I just said, because of our past dealings, I don't think it would be in either of our best interests for us to work together. So that's the way to handle it. And you know what? He's actually recommended people to me after I did that. I don't know why, but somehow he respected my opinion that, we had our differences, and he acknowledged what we did. And he still sends people my way every once in a while. I'll hear from somebody and they'll say, oh, so-and-so told me I should contact you. And it's like, every time I hear that, I'm kind of surprised and I wonder. And so something was done right. So it's a way of not burning bridges. It was he and our personalities did not mesh well. And I told him that, no, I don't think we're a good fit. So the best advice I can give to anybody facing this is be polite, be truthful. Don't make up lies like, don't say that, I don't know. Just don't make up lies as why you can't work with a person. If it's somebody that you just don't think you can get along with, tell them that because of whatever reason, you don't think that they and you would be a good fit for working together. Now, in Christy's case, she found a really good solution, and that was to politely say no, but she also offered recommendations. So this person that was looking for business card design, she recommended other designers that he can go to, which is a great option. I did not do that with the gentleman that contacted me. I just said no thank you, and feel free to go look somewhere else. I did not offer recommendations, but that is a great solution. So that's about all I have to say on this topic. I just wanted to mention that you do not have to work with clients that you don't want to work with. It's your business. You get to decide. And sometimes the money may be good, but the troubles are not worth it. So once again, thank you, Christy, for posting that in the Facebook group. I grabbed it from there because I thought it was a really good question to include on the podcast. And I would love to answer your question in a future episode of the podcast. If you have something you would like to ask me, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and submit your question, and I'll get to it on a future episode. So that's it for today. I want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/smartpress and order your free sample paper book from SmartPress and have a look at the over 50 different paper samples that you can have your next print project printed on. And I can tell you, I have my free sample right here in front of me, and they have some really, really nice looking papers to choose from. And also, if you haven't done so, I would really appreciate a nomination for the podcast awards. Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/podcast awards and nominate Resourceful Designer in the arts category. So thank you very much. I always appreciate it when you tune in and listen to what I have to say, because I know that by doing so, it means that you are devoted and invested in your design business. So kudos to you for doing that. And speaking of design business, it's time for me to get back to work. I am Mark DeCote, wishing you all the best with your business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.